I came home from my business trip to find my jewelry box empty. Not just missing a few pieces, completely cleaned out. The vintage Cartier watch my grandmother left me, the diamond earrings I'd saved 2 years to buy, the pearl necklace from my first promotion, the sapphire ring I'd bought myself for my 30th birthday. Gone. All of it. $15,000 worth of memories and milestones reduced to empty velvet compartments and a note on my dresser written in my father's careful handwriting. Had to borrow these for Daniel. Will explain later. Dad. I sat on my bed holding that note for 20 minutes, reading it over and over like the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Borrow. Like jewelry was something you could just take and return. Like my grandmother's watch would somehow find its way back to my wrist after being pawned or sold or whatever the hell he'd done with it. I called him immediately, hand shaking so hard I could barely dial. Sandra, honey, you're back early, he said when he answered, like nothing had happened. Where's my jewelry, Dad? Silence. Then a sigh. I can explain. Then explain. Daniel got in over his head again. The guys he owes aren't the type to wait around for payment plans. They were threatening to break his legs, Sandra. What was I supposed to do? Not steal from me. I didn't steal anything. I borrowed it. I'll pay you back. You sold my grandmother's watch. Another pause. I had to. It was worth the most. That's when something inside me snapped. Not the explosive kind of anger that burns hot and fast. The cold kind. The kind that settles in your bones and doesn't leave. How much do you owe them? 15,000. But Sandra, he's your brother. Family helps family. Where's Daniel now? He's staying with us for a while. Until this blows over. Of course he was. Of course my 32-year-old brother was hiding in our childhood home while my father sold my possessions to clean up his mess. Again. This wasn't the first time Daniel had gotten into trouble with gambling. It wasn't even the 5th time. But it was the first time they'd made it my problem without asking. I drove to my parents' house that night. Not to yell or cry or make a scene. I needed to see Daniel. Needed to look him in the eye and hear him try to justify what they'd done. I found him in the kitchen, sitting at the table like he lived there, eating my mother's meatloaf like it was any other Tuesday. Hey, Sandra, he said when I walked in, not even looking up from his plate. Daniel. Dad told me you were upset about the jewelry thing. The jewelry thing. Like it was a minor inconvenience. Like my grandmother's watch was just some trinket I'd picked up at a yard sale. Upset is an interesting word choice. He finally looked up. Look, I know it sucks, but I didn't have a choice. These guys were serious. You didn't have a choice? You know what I mean. No, I don't. Explain it to me. He set down his fork, annoyed now. I got in too deep with some poker games. High-stakes stuff. I thought I could win it back, but... He shrugged. Sometimes you lose. How long have you been gambling? It's not like that. I'm not addicted or anything. I just had a bad streak. How long? A couple years, I guess. But Sandra, it's not like you ever wore that stuff anyway. It was just sitting there. That's when I understood. This wasn't about desperation or family loyalty or even Daniel's safety. This was about the fact that they'd looked at my life, my possessions, my hard work, and decided it didn't matter. That I didn't need fancy things because I was just Sandra, practical Sandra, responsible Sandra who would understand and forgive and probably even help pay for the next mess. My father walked into the kitchen then, saw us talking, and immediately went into damage control mode. Sandra, I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss how we're going to handle this. We? As a family. The family that sold my jewelry without asking? You're being dramatic. It's just jewelry. Just jewelry. My grandmother's watch, which she'd worn every day for 40 years before leaving it to me with a note about time being the most precious gift we can give each other. Just jewelry. I want it back. Sandra, be reasonable. It's gone. But I'll pay you back, I promise. With what money, Dad? You haven't worked in 3 years. His face flushed. That's not fair. What's not fair is stealing from me to enable Daniel's gambling addiction. It's not an addiction, Daniel said. God, you're so dramatic. I looked at both of them, my father who'd raised me to believe family came first, my brother who'd spent his entire adult life making messes for other people to clean up, and I realized something important. I was done being the responsible one. Done being the safety net. Done pretending that my sacrifices didn't matter because I was the one who had her life together. I'm filing a police report, I said. The room went quiet. My mother, who'd been washing dishes and pretending not to listen, turned around. You wouldn't, my father said. Watch me. Sandra, please, my mother finally spoke up. He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. But apparently that doesn't mean much when Daniel needs money. I left that night without another word. I didn't file a police report, not yet. Instead, I did something else. I started making calls. The first call was to my cousin Daniel, who worked in collections. Not the aggressive type, the professional type. The kind who knew how to track down assets and freeze accounts and make life very difficult for people who owed money. I explained the situation and asked him to do me a favor. You want me to investigate your own brother? I want you to find out exactly how deep this goes. Every debt, every creditor, every stupid bet he's made in the last 5 years. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Sandra, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. The second call was to my friend Jessica, who worked in real estate. My parents had been talking about downsizing for years but never followed through. I asked her to do a market analysis on their house, find out exactly what it was worth, and pull the records on their mortgage. The third call was to my accountant. I had him pull together every financial record I had showing money I'd lent or given to Daniel over the years. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, the $2,000 I'd given him for his business idea that never materialized, the $500 for car repairs, the $300 for utilities. It added up to more than I'd realized. Daniel called me back 2 days later. Sandra, you need to sit down for this. Daniel didn't owe $15,000. He owed $47,000. To 6 different people. The guys threatening to break his legs were just the most recent creditors. He'd been running a tab at underground poker games for 2 years, borrowing from loan sharks to pay casino debts, taking cash advances on credit cards to fund sports bets. My jewelry hadn't solved his problem, it had barely made a dent. There's more, Daniel said. He forged your father's signature on a loan application last month. $15,000 personal loan from a predatory lender. 36% interest. My father doesn't know? The payments don't start for another 2 weeks. That night, I drove back to my parents' house. Not to confront anyone, just to watch. I parked across the street and observed the scene through their living room window. My father watching television, my mother reading a book, Daniel on his phone, probably placing another bet. A perfect family tableau of denial and enablement. I pulled out my phone and sent Daniel a text, we need to talk. Coffee tomorrow. Come alone. He showed up at the cafe looking nervous, which was smart of him. I'd chosen a public place, somewhere he couldn't make a scene or storm off without causing a spectacle. I know about the $47,000, I said before he could even sit down. His face went white. Sandra, I can explain. I know about the forged loan documents. He slumped into his chair. Who told you? Does it matter? Here's what's going to happen, Daniel. You're going to tell our parents the truth. All of it. Tonight. I can't do that. It'll kill them. They're going to find out anyway when the payments start on Dad's loan. The one you took out in his name. Sandra, please. I just need a little more time. I have a system now, I've been studying the patterns. Stop. If you could just lend me enough to get even. Stop talking. He did, finally. I pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. What's this? Copies of everything. Every debt, every forged document, every creditor looking for you. I'm giving you 24 hours to come clean to our parents. If you don't, I'm taking this to the police and filing charges for theft and fraud. You're bluffing. Try me. That's when he started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind he'd used since childhood to get out of trouble. Sandra, I'm sick. I know I am. I need help. Then get help. But first, you tell them the truth. I left him sitting there, envelope in hand, finally understanding that his big sister wasn't going to save him this time. He didn't tell them that night. Or the next night. On the third day, my father called me. Sandra, we need to talk. Daniel says you're threatening to have him arrested. Daniel is a liar, Dad. But not about this. Come over. Let's discuss this like adults. No. You come to my apartment. Both of you. Tonight at 7. They showed up 20 minutes early, looking like they were attending a funeral. My father kept checking his watch, my mother kept wringing her hands. Daniel wasn't with them. Where is he? I asked. He's having a hard time with all this, my mother said. I bet he is. I laid out everything on my coffee table. Daniel's investigation, the loan documents, the full scope of Daniel's debts, and photos of every piece of jewelry they'd sold. My father's face grew paler with each document. $47,000, I said when they'd finished reading. And that's just what we know about. Sandra, we had no idea, my mother started. You had no idea because you didn't want to know. You wanted to believe the $15,000 would fix everything because it was easier than admitting Daniel has a serious problem. What do you want from us? My father asked quietly. I want my jewelry back. All of it. We can't undo what's been done. Then you'll pay me back. Every penny. $15,000 plus interest. Sandra, we don't have that kind of money. Then you'll figure it out. Sell the house. Get second jobs. Ask Daniel to contribute. My mother looked horrified. We can't sell the house. We've lived there for 30 years. And I've been wearing my grandmother's watch for 10 years. Things change. That's when my father's composure finally cracked. This is vindictive, Sandra. This isn't who you are. You're right. The old Sandra would have helped you find another solution. The old Sandra would have taken out a loan to pay Daniel's debts. The old Sandra would have pretended this never happened and waited for the next crisis. But the old Sandra is gone. She died the day you sold her grandmother's watch. They left without another word. I didn't hear from them for a week. Then the call started. First my aunt, then my uncle, then family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. All with the same message, Sandra, your parents are devastated. Sandra, Daniel is family. Sandra, you're tearing the family apart over material things. The story they were telling was simple. I was being cruel and materialistic, punishing my family over jewelry when my brother's life was in danger. They conveniently left out the part about the $47,000 in gambling debts and the forged loan documents. I didn't try to defend myself. I'd learned that lesson from watching other family dramas unfold. The more you explain, the more guilty you sound. Instead, I let them talk while I put my real plan into motion. Jessica had been busy. The market analysis showed my parents' house was worth $350,000. They owed $120,000 on the mortgage. That left $230,000 in equity, more than enough to pay Daniel's debts and compensate me for my jewelry. But I wasn't interested in forcing them to sell. I had a better idea. I called the predatory lender who'd given Daniel the loan in my father's name. Explained that the signature was forged, that my father had no knowledge of the loan, and that I had documentation proving fraud. They were very interested in hearing from me. I called Daniel's other creditors, one by one. Told them I was his sister, that I was concerned about his gambling problem, and that I thought they should know he had no assets or income to repay what he owed. I gave them my parents' address, suggested they might want to discuss payment plans directly with the family. Then I waited. It took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of Daniel hiding in his childhood bedroom while loan sharks and creditors started showing up at my parents' door. 2 weeks of my father realizing that the $15,000 loan payment was due, and that he was legally responsible for a debt he'd never agreed to. 2 weeks of my mother answering increasingly aggressive phone calls from people demanding money they didn't have. My father called me on a Tuesday morning. His voice was different, smaller somehow. "Sandra, we need your help." "My help?" "These people, they're not going away. They want their money now. Have you talked to Daniel about this? He's not handling it well. He locked himself in his room yesterday and won't come out." "What do you want me to do, Dad?" A long pause. "We need to borrow money. To pay them off." "Borrow from who?" Another pause. "From you." I let the silence stretch for a full minute. "Let me understand this correctly. You want me to lend you money to pay the debts you created when you stole my jewelry to pay Daniel's gambling debts?" "When you put it like that." "How should I put it?" "Sandra, please. They're threatening to put a lien on the house. Your mother is scared to answer the phone. I'll make you a deal, Dad. Anything. Sell the house. Use the proceeds to pay Daniel's debts. Move into a smaller place you can actually afford. Get Daniel into a residential treatment program for gambling addiction. Do all of that, and I'll forgive the $15,000 you owe me for my jewelry." "Sandra, we can't sell the house. It's our home. Then figure out another way to pay me back." "You're really going to let them destroy us over jewelry?" "I'm not letting them do anything, Dad. You created this situation when you decided my possessions were less important than Daniel's problems. You escalated it when you refused to make him face the consequences. Now you get to live with the results." I hung up and turned off my phone. 3 days later, I got a call from Jessica. "Sandra, your parents just listed their house. How much are they asking?" $349. "They'll probably get it." That weekend, I drove past the house I'd grown up in. There was a for sale sign in the front yard and boxes visible through the windows. Daniel's car wasn't in the driveway. I pulled into the driveway and knocked on the door. My mother answered, looking older than I remembered. "Sandra." She didn't sound surprised to see me. "Where's Daniel?" "Rehab. In Arizona. 90-day program." "And Dad?" "He's at work. He got a job at the hardware store downtown." I looked past her at the boxes, the empty walls, the dismantled life they'd built in this house for 30 years. "I'm sorry it came to this, Mom." "Are you?" That question hung between us. Was I sorry? Sorry they were losing their house, sorry Daniel was finally getting help, sorry my father had to work again, sorry the family was scattered and broken? "I'm sorry you chose Daniel's secrets over my trust," I said finally. "I'm sorry you thought so little of me that you believed I wouldn't fight back. I'm sorry it took losing everything for you to make him face his problems." She nodded slowly. The jewelry meant a lot to you. It wasn't about the jewelry, Mom. It was about the fact that you took it without asking and then told me I was being dramatic for caring. It was about watching you enable Daniel for years while expecting me to be the responsible one. It was about being treated like my feelings didn't matter because I was the one who had her life together. We never meant to make you feel that way. But you did. For years. She stepped aside and let me into the house. We walked through rooms that had once been filled with family dinners and birthday parties and Christmas mornings. Now they were just empty spaces waiting for new owners. "He's getting better," she said as we stood in what used to be Daniel's room. "The counselors say he's been gambling since college. We never knew how bad it was." "I know. The house will sell quickly. Jessica says we should have enough to pay everything off and put a down payment on a smaller place." "Good. Sandra, I know you'll probably never forgive us for what we did. But I want you to know that we're proud of you. For standing up for yourself. For not letting us walk all over you anymore." I looked at her for a long moment. "I don't need your pride, Mom. I need your respect. You have it. You've always had it. We just forgot to show it." That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Daniel. I'm in treatment. I know what I did was unforgivable. I know sorry isn't enough. But I want you to know that I'm trying to get better. Not for Dad or Mom or to save the house. For me. Maybe someday you'll give me a chance to prove I've changed." I stared at that message for a long time before responding. "Focus on your recovery. We'll figure out the rest later." 6 months later, my parents were settled in a small 2-bedroom condo across town. My father was working full-time and seemed happier than he'd been in years. My mother had joined a support group for families of addicts. Daniel had completed his 90-day program and moved to a sober living facility in another state. I never got my jewelry back. The pieces were gone, sold to pay debts and fund one last desperate attempt to win back what was already lost. But something else had been returned to me, my sense of self-worth. My understanding that I deserved better than being treated like a piggy bank with feelings. The house sold for full asking price. After paying off Daniel's debts, the mortgage, and the realtor fees, my parents had enough left over for their condo down payment and a small emergency fund. They never asked me for money again. On the 1-year anniversary of finding my jewelry box empty, I got a package in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was a small velvet box containing a simple silver chain with a single pearl pendant. Not expensive, not flashy, just elegant. The note read, "This belonged to Mom's grandmother. She wanted you to have it. From all of us, thank you for saving our family by refusing to save us. D." I held that pendant for a long time, thinking about the difference between jewelry and family, between enabling and helping, between being used and being loved. Then I put it on and wore it to dinner with friends, people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's walking away with your dignity intact and letting people face the consequences of their own choices. Sometimes it's refusing to be the person they expect you to be and discovering who you actually are in the process. My family is smaller now, but it's more honest. Daniel sends me updates from his recovery program. My parents call to check on me, not to ask for favors. We're rebuilding, slowly, on a foundation of respect instead of obligation. And every time I catch my reflection wearing that simple pearl pendant, I remember the most important lesson I learned from losing $15,000 worth of jewelry. You can't put a price on self-respect, but you can definitely sell it too cheaply if you're not careful. I'm not being careful anymore. I'm being intentional. And that's made all the difference.
Did you enjoy watching this family get their comeuppance? Subscribe to Karma's Counter-Strike for more epic revenge stories. And tell us about your own family betrayal experiences in the comments below.